The awkward smile to start the show. David Nuno and Raheel Ramzanali laughing on air. Yeah, it's at 2:24. Typically, we start at 1 o'clock. We had some weather stuff, and then we had some interviews planned, so we kind of had to get the show ready. But we are going to be talking a lot about the Astros. What do I whisper when I say that, Raheel?
Because you don't want to get in trouble, right? Like people are so upset about what the Astros did, and rightfully so. Look, they cheated. They got caught in 2017. By the way,
Did they
didn't continue in
really?
2018.
Did
Yeah,
they? Did
and
they?
yeah, I know. But look, hey, this is a huge redemption season, and the Houston Astros will have their first game tomorrow on Friday. But MLB gets going here tonight with the Yankees and the Nationals. Of course, the Nationals who defeated our beloved Houston Astros in the World Series. They get to have their World Series banner reveal in front of nobody, and we'll have all that. But man, I haven't been this excited for a season, a redemption season, a shortened season in a long time because the Astros are going to be out to prove it. They're not the favorites to win it. In fact, looking at some of the odds this morning, they are the fourth favorite to win this. Some people aren't even picking them to win the division, David. And I can't wait, man. I just can't wait to see what our Astros are going to do to quiet all the doubters.
So a couple things. First off, we have a great show, and I will tell you the lineup here in a moment. I'm sure you can read. If you got your Facebook open or whatever, you'll read who we have. Christy says that nobody cares and that we're lame, Raheel. And I say that nobody cares what she cares about. So how about that? So we got that angle. But no, look, we're going to talk to a guy who is from Houston, reps Houston on the national stage. He doesn't think, and I'm talking about Robert Flores, that the Astros are going to win the AL West. He still has them playing deep, and we'll hear from him in a little bit. I'm just done with the whole scandal thing, and I think it's dead, right? Like it's dead from a huge talking point. I'm just done because it's like we have other things to move on to. It is something we have to talk about on the eve of the Astros beginning their season. Absolutely. We have to. But there's still like so many other storylines. I mean, we're about to do a 60-game season with a huge pandemic where we're not even sure the entire season is going to happen.
Yeah, that's going to be the other angle of all of this is, all right, we've got baseball back. Everyone's excited, and every day's different. So we don't know what happens, right? We don't know what's going to happen. But we also had a great conversation with BeIN Sports' Phil Schoen, who has been covering international soccer, right? And what can MLB learn from what's happening overseas? They just wrapped up a lot of leagues. They've got Champions League starting up here pretty soon. So if that's any indication, then we will get a full season. The way Dusty's going to manage is going to be different, right? Because it's only 60 games. What are you going to do with the pitching squad? You got so many question marks in the bullpen. I'm not worried about the offense. Jordan, we're not sure when he's going to get back, which is going to be another angle. Like when Jordan gets back, let's say 15 games in with 45 left, that's a huge spark again. Like last season, he was a great spark. So, man, I just can't wait, and I want them to win it all just to see the reactions from other fan bases and how upset they're going to be.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. Like, look, we have a team that has been so polarizing, so hated around the world. Like it's just a different feeling. Like when the Rockets were winning their championships, and even James Harden, who's not the most beloved guy in the NBA, there's just still Houston, right? It's just kind of like, yeah, it's a team in the South. But when you talk about Major League Baseball and where the Astros are on the landscape, it is nothing but vitriol from fans out there.
Yep. And then speaking of the Rockets, they have their first scrimmage tomorrow. So tomorrow we've got baseball and we've got a scrimmage, but it's still basketball coming back from the NBA bubble, which, by the way, a week's worth of tests, no positive tests for the NBA with players inside the bubble. So that's positive news. Man, Russell Westbrook returned to practice. He's not going to play in the scrimmage more than likely tomorrow. I just love Russell Westbrook's intensity in practice, in everything he does. I'm rooting for him and our guys, PJ Tucker, Robert Covington. I can't wait, man.
Well, here's the thing too, man. It's like when you talk about Russell, what he brings to the Rockets, it's a little bit of what Chris brought, right? A little mental toughness, a little playoff toughness. But this is a dude who wants the ball and be an alpha male, but he's also good friends with somewhat of an alpha male too in James Harden, and that mix during a playoff run is going to be great.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, right? Like working with a friend, like a true friend, you and I can have disagreements, but we
Don't you love it when people are talking to you on the show and then they go completely silent? Isn't that just the best thing when you have your little partner giving you nothing but props on the air and then all of a sudden he disappears? Okay, so we'll get Raheel back on the show here momentarily. But look, what Russell Westbrook and James Harden can bring to the Rockets, right? And a frozen Raheel in the playoffs, I think we just do not know. We absolutely do not. Oh, hey, Raheel.
I'm
Thanks for
sorry,
joining
I
us.
don't know what happened. I'm back though. I'm back.
You know, that moment of pure stage fright, like, well, this doesn't go the way the show's supposed to go.
I thought you were knocked off too, and I thought we just had two black screens, and I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. And our Wi-Fi has been great the whole day, so of course it went out right when we started.
What I was talking about is just like, I mean, they made this trade. Look, I was a big Chris Paul fan. I really enjoyed doing that show. I mean, covering him and watching him play. I really loved him. I think you do this trade 100 times over because you get a younger, more explosive guy. But I don't know if he's the guy that lead them to the promised land. I think a healthy Chris Paul could be the difference, right? That's what could have happened 2 years ago. Even last year, he wasn't himself. So from that perspective, your legacy is made in the playoffs. And I'll give you a couple examples, Raheel. Mario Elie, Robert Horry, certain names in this town that mean so much, even Vernon Maxwell means so much is because what they did in the playoffs. You could say the same thing about Marwin Gonzalez and the Astros, hitting huge home runs, hitting big buckets when it matters, changes the way you look at players. And that's what we're going to find out about Westbrook.
And I think, you brought up a lot of great role players there, and I think this Rockets team is packed with them. Robert Covington, PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, who was not right during the beginning of the season. The pandemic layoff gave him some time to get healthy, and he's going to be a needed boost for the Houston Rockets in the style they're going to be playing in. So that's going to be another angle for the Houston Rockets, man. I just can't wait for both the Astros and the Rockets because now the health factors, because it's such a smaller sample size, you have less of a chance of major injuries, right? Like, that's what I believe. Like, Justin Verlander, he's going to be healthy. Everything has been good with him, right? It's just he runs out of gas sometimes in the playoffs, back end of the playoffs. So, man, this is going to be a sprint for both the Rockets and the Astros, and it all starts up tomorrow.
No, it absolutely starts. So I'm looking forward to that. But, Heezy, before we get into our interviews with Ro Flo and Phil Schoen, you mentioned some stuff in the pre-show meeting. Freaking Mike Tyson, we knew that he was ready to roll and looks like he could fight anybody at their prime. But now he is going to be fighting against Roy Jones Jr. Update me on this.
Yeah, so Mike Tyson just announced that on September 12th, he and Roy Jones Jr. are going to be fighting in a new Legends Only League. All right, so like we've seen with the Big Three in basketball, this is now geared towards Legends Only. We talked to Lou Savarese, who Houston's own, right? He has a gym here, a great friend of ours. He wanted to fight Mike Tyson, but now we finally find out who it's going to be. It's going to be your guy, Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson. And just looking at the preview that they put up, man, there's got to be at least a 20 to 30-pound weight difference between the two.
Look, I remember when Roy was at his peak. He was a spectacular guy to watch, just like Mike, right? In a different way. They were both spectacular in a different way. But when you watch what Mike is doing now, again, we haven't seen any highlight tapes, right? And everything is made on Instagram and on YouTube, right? So we haven't seen the highlight tape yet. But when we see the highlight tape, I just can't wait to see what Roy, because the last time I saw Roy fight, like a real competitive fight, he didn't seem like the Roy that was the guy that I'm used to seeing.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I think the biggest one is going to be, what is Tyson going to look like, right? Like, everyone's so... Yeah. We're so hungry to see Mike Tyson get in there one more time, and his rebound and rebuilding of himself physically. That's going to be a cool angle. But man, I think it's going to be a hard watch regardless. Like, both of those guys are going to run out of gas after the second round.
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, look at the way Mike looks right now.
That's fine. That's all great. But it's going to be it's going to be bad to watch after the second round, in my opinion. The first two rounds, I'm sure it's going to be cool. But after that, I don't know.
Hey, you put also on the rundown Washington changing their name to a soccer team name. Am I reading that correctly? Washington Football Club?
Yeah, so, we saw Washington announce that they are going to rename their teams. There were so many cool names out there, the Red Tails being one of the front runners. We saw the Sentinels, I believe, as another one. And now because it's so close to the start of the season and they just can't get everything rebranded and all that, they just announced they're going to be called Washington Football Team. Simple. Kind of like,
it sounds very soccer.
Yeah. Well, no, at least with soccer, you get like Washington FC.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You would get that. But Washington Football Team just seems like the lamest name you could use. Like, for example, today on the newscast, you would be David Sports Reporter. That's right. what it's equivalent to. You're like, come on, that's all you could do in this time. Like, I get it's a placeholder, but try something else,
Yeah, is this going to be a Band-Aid, though, like Washington Football Team until the new name is developed? Is that kind of what it is?
Yeah, according to all reports, they are going to announce a new name that is going to be their permanent name. But because of the time, you have to get a lot of things done, right? Like around the stadium, marketing, Nike has to make your uniforms, all that stuff. They just figured that right now, because of the timeline, it'd be easier just to go with Washington Football Team and then roll out a huge campaign with the newer team name, whenever they announce that, which will be more than likely at the end of next season or at the end of the season.
Hey, Ashley says it's lame because they're taking away the history. I don't know if they're taking away the history. And this is where I bring in the Texans-Oilers situation, right? So, yeah, the Titans took the Houston history, but they didn't really take it because those memories happened here, right? So, like, the fact that they have Earl Campbell's number in their stadium is ridiculous. Earl Campbell never played there. He's a Houston guy, Houston legend, not a Nashville legend.
Yeah, the history is going to remain the same, right? Like the other one to look at is the Washington Wizards and the Bullets, right? Their history still remains the same, right? Like if you're a fan of that team, you still remember certain moments, and that's not going to be taken away, and it's still brought up in broadcasts. Like that's not changing, so it'll be fine. And I think I know people don't like some of the decisions that are being made by leagues, but this is a good one, and we'll see what they pick when they announce that team name a little bit later on.
All right, so what's next? Okay, who's going to change next? Is it going to be the Cleveland Indians? Because I know there's been discussions there. Are the Atlanta Braves going to change? The Blackhawks in Chicago?
The Braves have already announced a few changes around their stadium. They're going to be taking away a few things, but I don't know if they're going to change their names. And I know the Cleveland Indians, they took away the caricature, right? That was their mascot for a while. So they went away from that last season, and it looked like everything was going to be okay. But I'm not sure what they're going to do. I think all the momentum has been towards the Washington rebrand or the Washington Football Team rebrand.
So we got a pretty cool show. We're going to talk to Robert Flores, MLB Network. He is the one guy that I believe reps Houston at the highest level, right? Like you don't really hear people support, because all we hear is about the a Houston bias, right? And sometimes I think it's true, not on purpose. I think it's just because it's not a sexy town, if you will. But sometimes I think we overblow it, right? Robert does rep Houston, and he's at the MLB Network. He spent a lot of time at ESPN. He worked in Houston behind the scenes for some time, did TV in Austin, so he's got a lot of ties here. Went to Dobie High School. I did not know that about him. So we're going to chat with him about baseball, about other sports and whatnot. So that's going to be a good conversation. We're also going to talk to Phil Schoen from BeIN Sports. So we have a little bit of a soccer audience, and we're going to give them a little bit of that, because what's happening in Europe is they've been able to figure out sports, Raheel. Like they're actually finishing seasons, finishing the season.
They're starting Champions League up here. That, and what Champions League is the best of all the leagues coming together for a big tournament. So not only have they wrapped up seasons, David, in August 7th, they're starting up their big tournament that brings everyone together. So this is exciting, and I think there's things that leagues over here can learn from. The NBA is totally different because they're in a bubble. No league is doing that overseas, the bubble format, even though they'll play in one area, but they're not doing the bubble quarantine style of relaunch. So MLB would be the interesting one because of the travel that's associated with it and the amount of people that come with the team.
And I also think the NFL is going to be real interesting as well because
Yep.
Baseball is kind of already social distance, if you will, except for if you're a man on first, second, or third. Obviously, there's typically going to be a guy close to you. You're going to share a ball, which I'm sure each play will, they'll use a new ball like they do anyway, right?
Yeah.
But in football, it's like this is what you do every play.
I know that's going to be football is the whole new one. And, we talked about it last week. Like they weren't even ready. They didn't even have a plan in place. And now they seem to be getting a little bit closer to their plan and figuring out what exactly it's going to take. And that's a whole different monster, man. Football is going to be a whole different monster on the professional level, collegiate level. That I know, like you can't learn lessons from other leagues when you're football because it's so unique the way it's played and with the amount of people, again, that come with a football team.
Right. No,
so that's going to be different.
So look, I'm just ready. I'll be at Minute Maid this weekend. I'll be there. Greg will be there tomorrow. I'll be there Saturday, Sunday. I'm looking forward to being able to hear everything because you're going to be able to hear a lot. You're going to see so much. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to some normalcy. I am cautiously optimistic, but I am still worried. Like, what happens if one pitcher gets COVID? You have no pitchers? Like, what does that mean, right? Like, so that part of it is interesting. And Tony is reporting there on the stream that Soto positive. So does the game get postponed? This is why these are the same. I mean, as I'm saying that comment, this is what's happening, right? Like one guy happens. So I went and talked to a NFL player today, and he was a little bit worried too. He was like, "What happens if the linebacker crew or the wide receiver crew or the linemen or the quarterbacks, one of them gets it, and you guys are in those quiet? I mean, hopefully they do a lot more Zooms than together, but like if it spreads through a locker room, that team can't play."
Yeah, and that's the thing that, when Adam Silver, when they were discussing the relaunch of the NBA, he said, we have to be comfortable with the fact that if somebody tests positive, we're not shutting things down. We're not taking away the entire group. What we're going to do is that person will be in quarantine, and then we'll test everyone around them. And, you hope for the best. Like, really, that's all they have is hope that if a linebacker has it, that it doesn't spread to the entire defense or the entire linebacking core. So you just have to hope at this point. I wish I had a more scientific answer, but that's all it is at this point. You can just quarantine that one player and then hope for the best and, trace everybody, trace his steps, and make sure that nobody else has it.
Yeah, I just want to see some games, and I want people to be safe, and I want people to be able to enjoy sports at the highest level and not have to worry. But we're in a different world now, and we are have to worry. But by the way, earlier, Eduardo was talking about Russell Westbrook, and I'm going to bring this comment up to you. He didn't like the fact that Russell Westbrook was wearing the mask below his nose.
I didn't like it either.
I didn't care, man.
But here's the thing, the NBA bubble. Everyone's been tested, and no one's left, right? So I know they're wearing their mask to be extra safe, but nobody has it there. Russell had to test 4 times, twice before he left, twice when he broke quarantine, and they're testing all the time there. Same thing with the UFC. Now, let me get this off my chest real quickly before we get to the interviews, okay? Have you been watching any of the UFC cards, right? They're doing it in Yas Island, which is in Abu Dhabi. Everyone there has been tested, and we've talked to UFC fighters and coaches that have gone and fought during the pandemic. They're constantly being tested. Everyone's clear. Then why is everyone wearing a mask?
Because you're not sure.
But the referee, okay, so the referee doesn't wear a mask. Obviously, the fighters don't wear a mask. The broadcasters aren't. But then the corner has to wear a mask. The ring girls will have to wear a mask when they're sitting down. I'm so confused by this.
Yeah, no, look. I think part of it is because we're not completely sure. Are you asymptomatic? I mean, I know you can pass a test and then get it later, right? And it makes people feel better. At the end of the day,
that's
it makes people feel better.
Absolutely. Sorry, that was just my little UFC thing I had to talk about.
I just think do whatever they want you to do and just follow a protocol, right? Like if you go to work and they want you to wear a mask and gloves, you wear a mask and gloves. At your house, if you don't want to wear your mask, okay, cool, whatever. Like
nobody's telling people to wear masks at their house, though.
Dude, my mom came over today. and a mask.
Good, because she doesn't live in your house.
But she was in the car. You don't need the mask in the car when you drive.
No.
It frightens me.
I know. Did you say hi to Poppy for me?
I did. I gave him a hug.
There you go.
He's doing great. My parents are Asian, but they're still great. My dad will be 90 next week, man. He will be 90. So I'm very blessed. So all right, so we got some interviews to get into, Heezy. Comments are going crazy today. Like,
good. Let them comment, baby. That's what I want.
It helps us. Keep commenting.
Keep commenting. We're all for it.
Let's go.
So Robert Flores of the MLB Network, and then Phil Schoen of BeIN Sports. Really enjoyed these interviews. I think you guys will like them as well.
So let's cue it up as we continue here on the No Layups podcast. This is an interview that we did just a second ago, right before we went live. Here's Robert Flores. All right, Heezy, I'm really excited about our next guest, Robert Flores, MLB Network, a guy that I've known a long time. We've all seen him here in this area. He reps Houston everywhere he goes. And Roflo, man, you're among some friends here, some Astros fans, and, of course, we're impartial journalists as well. What's up, man?
How you doing? How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Dude, nice to talk to you. How exciting of a day is this for you? We finally have baseball coming back.
Yeah, no, it's great because look, there was a real concern that maybe we weren't going to have this date, but it's here. I think people are eager for the guys to be back on the field, and a lot of precautions have been implemented and have been taken to make sure that it's as safe as possible. And so far, it has been good, and hopefully that continues throughout the season.
Robert, I'm going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but when we break down this Astros team, I understand the vitriol. I understand the disgust, right? But I also think there are other teams that we have evidence and are in trouble, but they don't get the same kind of vitriol. And I kind of also feel like people just point at them when they talk about this entire scandal. Why are they singled out when Boston had their issues and there's a lot of whispers with other franchises?
Well, I've always said that specifically about this case, multiple things can be true. But Boston, the Red Sox are a repeat offender. That is true. The Astros had a much more elaborate system in place. That can be true. So also, I think there was a degree of arrogance that the Astros had that they have no one to blame for but themselves. So there are legitimate questions that can be asked of Major League Baseball and the investigators about the differences in how things were adjudicated between the Red Sox and the Astros. That's fine, but again, multiple things can be true, and at the same time, we live in a different world. The punishment that was handed out and the investigation in January of 2020, that seems like 10 years ago. First of all, there's not going to be any fans in the stands. So that's not going to be an issue for the Astros. And two, I think other teams and Major League Baseball have so many other issues just to be able to get on the field that I think what the Astros were accused of doing in 2017 is way, way, way down on the list.
It's also the new media adds to the hate as well, right? You got a lot of bloggers, you've got a lot of internet personalities that will throw stuff up against the wall without any evidence and add to this hatred for fans that are following that fan base blogger, right? For example, the Altuve buzzer thing, where in that report where the commissioner said, yes, the Astros cheated and the Astros had this scheme, but we found no evidence of the buzzer. Yet you can throw conspiracy theories out there and run with it and not run by the same rules that journalists have to go with. I think that also adds to the anger and adds to the conspiracies from fans that ruins it for certain teams.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think, I get why fans are still are interested in it, and I get why some people want to use it to increase their profile or for clicks or whatever. But I think from a Major League Baseball perspective, they're trying to move on, trying to understand all and apply all the lessons that were learned. Because because clearly no one ever wants to have this happen again. It's a dark period, but again, like I said, that feels like 100 years ago, because there's some real concerns. Again, because there was a real concern about we would never even get to opening day. So I think from a Major League Baseball perspective, I think, as an industry trying to learn from it, grow, move on. And I think the Astros would tell you the same thing.
Well, let's move on from it too. When you look at this Astros team, there's reasons that people are kind of doubting them. They've lost some star power, obviously. Jordan's not there right now. Garrett Cole's obviously gone. But there's also reason for optimism. A rested Justin Verlander is a different Justin Verlander, and also obviously Lance McCullers and Greinke as well. If Greinke's rested.
Yeah, I think that the time off certainly did Justin Verlander a lot of good, but also, as you mentioned, Lance McCullers has looked fantastic. I think you can tell just by his body language that he feels confident in his arm, in his mechanics, in his plan. So, and he was going to be on an innings restriction, right? Coming off Tommy John. I don't think that while they're going to certainly be cautious, that has changed. Those conditions has changed for him and the Astros. So I think that's a good thing. The problem I have, or the concerns I have with the Astros, are the back end of the rotation and the bullpen. Roberto Osuna not being able to start the season with the team, that's a problem. Brad Peacock still nursing a sore shoulder, that's a problem. Josh James going from the bullpen to the back end of the rotation. Yes, he figures to stabilize one, but you certainly lose, production from the other. So that's the reason I have the A's winning this division, at least my pick. I still have the Astros as the wild card. In fact, I have the Astros and the Yankees as the 2 wild card teams, because I had the Rays winning the East. But it's not going to be easy. And I think actually a 60-game season for those teams that maybe, because over the course of 162, talent in the lineup and your roster is going to win out. 60 games, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and that's, the Rays are an interesting pick, right? Like their trio of pitchers, they're going to start peaking. Morton won't, burn out at the back end there like he did kind of last season. That's an interesting pick. The A's are going to be solid as well. This 60-game season, the storylines, let's talk about this real quickly. To you, what are some of the best storylines going into the season?
I think for me, it's a couple of things. The rule changes. I've been pushing for a universal DH for a while now. I never understood why the leagues play each other throughout the season, but yet depending on where you're playing at, the rules are different. It'd be like if the Wizards played the Rockets in Houston and the 3-point line was 2 feet farther in Houston than it was in Washington. It just didn't make any sense to me. So I'm glad for the universal DH. I think for the regular season, especially this regular season, starting the runner at second base in extra innings, I think that's a wise thing to do. I'm not in favor of it in the playoffs, and that won't be the case for the postseason. So it's the rule changes, I think, for me. And also, who are going to be the surprise teams that maybe get into the playoff mix or jump into the playoffs themselves? For me, it's a couple. One, it's the Chicago White Sox, and in the National League side, maybe look at the San Diego Padres too.
All right, Robert, let's just take a look at your time in Houston. Tell us a little bit about growing up here and how you became such a Houston fan, because I think you might be the only national guy that reps Houston sometimes, man.
Jim Nantz went to the University of Houston. I'm almost certain he didn't grow up in the city, but I was born and raised in Houston. I went to Dobie High School, went to University of Houston, worked at one of the TV stations in the market while in college. So look, home is always home, and home will always have a special place in your heart, no matter where you're from. But for me, it is special to because look, there's so many signature franchises on both coasts, right? No matter the sport, whether it's in the NFL, the Jets or the Patriots, or in our sport, the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. I mean, those are cornerstone franchises that have large national fan bases. And, it's nice. I think Houston and the Astros are starting to, at least after 2017, starting to get that notoriety of having the potential to have a kind of a national footprint. So, you do try to be professional, but it is nice to see when the teams from your hometown do well. But that's not just for the Astros. That goes for the Rockets and the Texans, and in fact, no team makes me curse more than watching the Texans and or the Rockets. So it's a frustrating watch, but I'm always rooting for those guys.
What's your go-to meal when you get back to the city of Houston?
It's Mexican food, man. It is always Mexican food. It's multiple times. However long I'm here, I'm getting Mexican food. And if I can squeeze in some barbecue, then I'm getting that too, because you cannot find good Tex-Mex up here. And don't even talk to me about barbecue up here. It's just not the same. So those are definitely the two things I'm going for when I'm down south.
Robert, I don't know if you remember, man. So back in 2012, I had just started at ABC 13, and you sent me a message on Twitter about some opportunities at ESPN, and I had an interview there, and I'll never forget. You coached me, man. You told me what to kind of expect, and
that's right.
Yeah. And you've always paid it forward, man. So that's just. Did somebody do that for you? Because that helped. I was so much more. I did terrible, by the way, but I was so much more comfortable after talking to you and having that situation. Did somebody help you?
Yeah, I felt like, as I said, going during college, I was fortunate enough to work part-time. It wasn't an internship. It was a part-time job at one of the TV stations there in Houston, and working in their sports department as associate producer, editor. I did a little bit of everything short of on camera. So the people that I worked with there, they were vital to showing me what to do and what not to do, or what things to be look out for. So I learned so much from them. So I'm always aware of that. And if someone comes to me with a good question and is really interested or curious about some facet of the business, then absolutely, I'm definitely going to impart in any kind of knowledge that I have.
How's your time at MLB Network been so far?
It's good. It's good. It is. It's different because I spent, after 11 years at ESPN, you cover everything, and there's not really a ample opportunity to focus in on just one, unless you are assigned to a specific sport. I anchored Sports Center, so I didn't really wasn't assigned to one specific sport. So it's nice to be able to focus on just one sport, but at the same time, you got to make sure that you are doing your homework, because clearly the people that are watching MLB Network and watching our show, MLB Central, which is on Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. in Houston, these people know their business. They do their homework too. So if you're going to entertain them and, more importantly, inform them, you definitely have to make sure you know what you're talking about.
Am I right? You have to sometimes moonlight on the NHL Network as well. Is that right?
Yeah, every now and then. More so when I arrived. I got there in 2016, and I was on the NHL Network quite a bit, but that has kind of tapered off since. Our show MLB Central runs. The past couple of years, it has been running through the wild card round. I'm not sure what it will look like this season, just because there's so many different new things and different elements and factors that are thrown in there. But I don't do quite as much NHL work, but I enjoy it. I love watching hockey. I would love to see Houston get an NHL team at some point in the future.
Did we lose you, Raheel?
All right, based on all your time at the MLB Network, who are the worst fans that interact with you on social media? Like the worst fan bases.
It's really there's no one, but I would say there's on very rare occasions do you have negative interactions with people, and I can tell you they span all fan bases. So there's not just one that gets the credit or the blame.
The worst fan
But
base
those
is the
are
one.
few. But those instances, like I said, are few and far between.
Robert, the worst fan base is the one who comes at you. It doesn't matter what team, right? Like they all have that one group of guys that come
Right.
at you no matter what you say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, everyone knows that I have a special place in my heart for the city of Houston, and there have been times where Astros Twitter has come after me. So that's how you know it's not just relegated to just one. It spans all across all fan bases.
I hate this new thing on Astros Twitter real quickly where, you know, when the report came down and all Astros Twitter was like, hey, it's time to embrace it. We're going to be the bad guys. And what, you know, like, let's be the bad guys and let's win championships and all this. But then they do petty things like anytime anybody tweets about the Astros, they'll quote tweet and be like, hey, this isn't fair. Like, hey, guys, what are you doing? Like, come on, either be the bad guys or be the whiny guys. That's I pick a side.
Right. I mean, look, I think every fan base thinks they're the best, and that's the beauty of sports. You know, they think that other fan base or that other team is no good, but you know that's one of the reasons we like sports.
Hey, Robert, so we do this thing, all of our guests that we get on here, Raheel's got a set 5 questions, kind of rapid fire, some thoughts. So I'm going to let Raheel take it over. He's got some good stuff for you.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. The same 5 questions. Number 1, what is one song you wish everybody would listen to at least once in their life?
Oh, the new Chris Brown song, Go Crazy. I love that song.
Dang.
It's 3 minutes of heaven.
Okay. All right, go get it. What's one thing you always have to have in your fridge?
Diet Dr. Pepper.
Yo, it's the best dessert. Remember they did that campaign where it's like all about Diet Dr. Pepper as a dessert afterwards. I don't know if you guys read that.
It's really good. And then, you know, I love Lil Sweet, the little mascot from the commercial. Yeah. So I am definitely down with Diet DP.
All right. What's one place you want to visit that you haven't yet?
Hawaii, I guess. Yeah.
All right. Who's one person alive that you want to have coffee with?
Hakeem Olajuwon.
Nice. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
You could probably run into him at Lifetime in Sugar Land. He's always there. He's always there.
What's Lifetime?
It's a gym, like 24-hour fitness. It's like a higher end gym, but he's there every single day. Like you can go play pickup ball with him.
I think he is as great as he is and was, and as much pub as he gets, and how he's still, you know, he's considered among the elite and the greats. I still think he's underrated. You know, whenever they talk about, oh, well, is it Kareem or is it Shaq? No, it is Hakeem, because, you know, Kareem, yes, did the sky hook, the whole thing, but I don't think there was a big man that combined the fluidity, the footwork, the ferociousness, the defense, all of it. I mean, just an amazing athlete.
All right, you're 100% correct there. And I'll say this. I actually, last time I interviewed Hakeem was at Lifetime Fitness for Raheel. He told me, meet me at Lifetime. That's how he rolls.
That's awesome.
I'm telling you, he's there every day. Like he works out with some kids that he's, you know, mentoring or whatever. But there was a time like where I had to stop watching because when I saw Hakeem, my legend, right? Like growing up, he was the guy. When he's getting his stuff thrown by like a 5'9" guy, I was like, I can't watch this anymore, man. I can't watch Hakeem play pickup anymore. But he's there, and he's so grateful with his time and giving with it. It's awesome to watch, man. It's so cool.
It's just a great story. I mean, a kid that you know, comes from Lagos, Nigeria, and now he embraced the city, and the city embraced him. You know, he's just one of my favorite athletes.
All right, last question. What's one app on your smartphone that you want to delete, but you just can't?
I think maybe the Zoom app. You know, I mean, now you need it. You know, our production meetings. You know, we had opening day of MLB Central today, and you know, our production meetings used to be in person in one conference room, but obviously that can't happen now. So it's something you need. You just dial it up on the old Zoom and listen to it while you put it on speakerphone while you drive, and that's how you get your production meeting done. But it's the new normal, right?
Yep.
Hey, Robert, man, I know you're very busy. I know you already worked today. I appreciate you making time. Last time I saw you was at the World Series, and I hope to see you again if the Astros make it back to the World Series, my friend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what what the postseason looks like, what media availability looks like. It is, as I said, it's going to be new and unique, and sure, sometimes a little bit challenging. But I'm just glad we have baseball to watch, and it starts tonight with 2 games, and then of course the Astros and everyone else on Friday.
Appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you.
You got it. See you guys.
We just had a great conversation there with Robert Flores of the MLB Network, and now we're going to a guy that I've been super excited to talk to, Raheel, Phil Schoen of BeIN Sports. Now, Phil, you don't know this, man, but I watch you like all the time, man. I am a diehard Real Madrid fan, and I know you do La Liga, League One, everything. So I get to see you all the time, man. Thanks for joining us.
It is absolutely my pleasure, and I think you need to aim a little bit higher, but I'm glad to be here.
Phil, he's been so excited to talk to you. This is like me running into Michael Jordan. So I just want to let you know how important of a figure you are in David Nuno's life. Okay. Yeah. And you brought him a lot of joy.
I was going to say Dean Smith could stop me too. So I'm not sure about anyone else, but I'm glad to be here.
Well, Phil, I think first off, man, I saw you the other day still pick Madrid to win Champions League. And I want to believe you. Like, I really want to believe you, but I'm thinking 2 away goals against Man City. This is real technical for soccer fans, but like, you think they can do it?
I think that they can. If this was 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I think it would be a lot difficult. But the one thing that Zinedine Zidane was able to do was to put a mindset, a focus, a tournament focus. I mean, again, I guess to kind of bring it to an American perspective, you're thinking March Madness. If you kind of put some small team going up against a giant team in February, you kind of have an idea what would happen. In March, okay, it doesn't happen a lot, but you could see a 15-2 occasionally, a 14-3. And this is not even that. I mean, I know gambling's illegal at Bushwood, but I think, what is it, 30-1 for Real Madrid for a team that has won more European titles than anyone? Just seems to be a relatively safe gambit. Plus, also, you look at Manchester City, Sergio Aguero, a huge question mark, and they're not the same team that they were coming in. Plus, also, they're a team that just lost their championship by 20 points, and Real Madrid just beat their arch rival by close to 10. So things can change, and I think everyone can attest in their own lives. A lot has changed over the last 3 or 4 months.
I can't wait. Champions League can't get here fast enough. And I know with so many leagues wrapping up and so many games being played now, we're actually talking about the matchups. We're actually talking about what's been happening on the pitch. But Champions League this year, the way it's set up, obviously the new rule changes, it's going to be just it's going to be a sprint of a finish here, and I can't wait for that. It's going to be so unique.
It is, and the hard thing to really get your mind around is, like I said, for example, even 2 teams that would have had to have been considered favorites when play stopped would be a Bayern Munich, and maybe even more so a month ago, but they haven't played in a month. PSG, dominant team, some of the best players on earth. They haven't played a competitive match in nearly 4 months. So who knows what's going to happen? I mean, you might as well go out and say Atalanta's going to win because they've been practically unbeatable in Serie A. But again, you just take a look at what we have seen over the last month and a half here on BeIN Sports, and you're looking at a team that goes into every single game treating it like a final. And Raheel, as you mentioned, the adjustment that's going to take place. I mean, you have the second legs for some of these, and then if you do advance, everything is one game. And Zinedine Zidane said he convinced his team in Spain every one of those final 11 games was a final. So they ended up going unbeaten. And in fact, if they needed to win that last game, I kind of have a feeling they probably would have, which would have been 11-0. So in some ways, Champions League is an even shorter and easier run.
So, Phil, we live in Texas, right? I went to A&M. He went to UT. So, like, I understand that I have to give equal time to the enemy. So I will ask about Barcelona here as nice as I can. So, like, what I find really interesting about—
I thought we were going to talk about UT, but anyway.
No, we're skipping them. But what I find interesting in European soccer is that Barcelona 10 days ago could have won La Liga, okay? and they're thinking about completely destroying and ripping up that program up because that's how it is there. This is a team that could still technically win Champions League, and it'd all be happy, but they're not happy there in Barcelona.
They are not, and I think you put a good finger on that, because you could look at Atletico, they could win, but I think when you take a look at what Diego Simeone did, again, second half of the season, was to basically go back to the roots. Okay, enough of this fancy ball. They did end up scoring more goals. They do have a lot more attack than they have had in recent years, but it tends to be from the back forward. They know what they can do, and they go out and do it. Real Madrid, there might be a game here or there where they dominate possession, but most of the time it's be firm and counter like lightning. Barcelona has a way to play, and they have, for the most part, players that can play it, but there have been little pieces of the puzzle that have moved away. And I think you can go to David Villa, you could go to Alexis, you could go to Nolito and Pedro, and those players aren't there. They go out, and in some ways they're doing what Real Madrid did under Florentino Perez before Zizou version 1.0, the flashy objects. They went out and got a Dembele. They went out and got an Antoine Griezmann. They went out and got Neymar, who was supposed to be the emergency fill-in for Messi or the replacement, and that didn't work. So you take a look at what they have not done, which was stick to their roots. Finally, almost due to desperation, they bring in Ricky Puig, and you're seeing signs that maybe there could still be something there. They drop Messi deeper, kind of into that Xavi role or a Xavi plus role, because the goals are still there, but they don't have those flank players. And Luis Suarez, some people are saying it's time to get rid of him, as you're talking about, just a total rebuild. But what we saw this year, there were still flashes when he was healthy and before the surgery, and I guess at times after the surgery, when the rehab was there, but he still wasn't razor sharp. When he was, he's still one of the best in the world, but you probably only have a year, maybe two of that. So this is a team that is in need of a rebuild. Starting 11, age of 31 for, I'd say, about 9 of the 11. And for Real Madrid, you look at their spine, Courtois, relatively young. Ramos, sure, 34, but maybe the best year of his career. Casemiro in his prime, and Karim Benzema about 31, but still looks like he has 2 or 3 more years at the top of his game. Plus, he fits that role better than almost anyone. On the outside, Zidane was able to rotate. I mean, he had guys like Eden Hazard, James Rodriguez, Gareth Bale, not even on the trip for the final match, and they still ended up winning. So this is a team that has rebuilt the way Zizou likes, and I think Barcelona still has the possibility, but they have to go back to their roots. Maybe a young American like Conrad de la Fuente, but he's still probably a couple of years away. Kid out of Miami can kind of play that Pedro Villa Nolito role. But the guys that they have, it really doesn't fit, and that's a problem that goes back 3, 4, 5 years.
All right, let's talk about quickly. You brought up some young Americans. What Christian Pulisic is doing right now with Chelsea, every single match, it's something special. What does this mean for our American viewers that we have some hope now, and not only hope, but he's performing. He's actually living up to all the hype.
Well, this is something we've been kind of waiting for probably for 20, 30, 40 years in effect. What's the joke that you hear sometimes? Soccer, America's sport of the future, as it has been for the past 3 decades. I mean, finally, that future seems to be coming, and it's due in large part to guys like Pulisic. And that's built on the foundation of guys like a Landon Donovan, a DeMarcus Beasley, and going back even before that, the players from 1990 and 1994, the Alexis, et cetera. We're starting to see that. And I was just listening to a book by Trevor Moawad, who's kind of, I don't want to call him a guru because he'd hate it, but Russell Wilson's guy who kind of keeps him focused. And he was also involved heavily in U.S. soccer back in Bradenton, the days of Freddie Adu. And what he was talking about was, when you look at Freddie Adu, you had a player who had all of the tools, all of the gifts, maybe not the drive and personality of a Christian Pulisic, but you kind of threw him to the wolves here in MLS in the early days where they weren't quite ready to handle him. Now, I think MLS has improved, and you look at some of the players that are coming up right now, but Pulisic didn't do that. Both of his parents were soccer players. They had the opportunity to send him to Europe at a relatively young age. They did, and what you're seeing now is that growth. So the talent is here. And I think there's many more Christian Pulisic's. I even got into an argument with him a little bit saying that he was successful in spite of U.S. soccer. And that was not a detriment to him. But I think there's a lot of players out there that have that potential in every single sport. I mean, America has so much going for it. But when it comes to soccer development, we're not quite there yet. So hopefully he's a sign that there could, with a little bit more commitment, could be many more like him.
Phil, I got to ask you about your career, because I read recently, and I didn't know this about you. You were part of the original MLS broadcasting crew. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, somehow it survived. And same thing with EA Sports. I was on FIFA back in 2000, and somehow, amazingly, 2 decades on, they're going strong. But it was growing up in South Florida. And I don't know if you guys can kind of equate, I mean, talking back to some people in the days of the NASL, but I was the typical pro sports fan. I was the guy that would be lining up at 7-Eleven to get Street and Smiths or Athlon or Who's Who. And then all of a sudden I was listening to the radio, and there was this team in Miami. Okay, that's kind of cool. And then I would watch, kind of funny, on PBS. That was the voice of soccer back in those days, with Star Soccer and the Bundesliga show. But when you take a look at the NASL's arrival in Fort Lauderdale, and really the emergence of some of those players, when Pelé came in, Muller was here, Nene Cubillas, Elias Figueroa, and a certain Ray Hudson kind of popped in. It was just something that caught my fancy. And going to the games, and eventually going to almost every single game I could, fell in love with the sport. But I still loved listening to sports radio on my little transistor under the pillow at night, tuning into Cleveland and St. Louis and New York and wherever I could. The fact that in college, and eventually right out of college, I was able to merge those two together was a blessing. And then the timing of that with the World Cup in '94, MLS a couple of years later. Again, like I said, it was just a blessing, and I've been able to do what I love for so long, and alongside some amazing people.
It's been awesome to watch you, and I know David can't get enough of it, so it's awesome, man. Let me ask you, just the last month or so, with so many leagues and so many teams back in play now, and of course, here today, we've got the MLB starting back up. The NBA has some scrimmages going. The Houston Rockets play tomorrow. The league starts up next week. What lessons can American sports learn from what soccer has done in the last month?
It's really hard. I think you even have to go back before, when people were kind of sticking their head in the sand a little bit. And you had Champions League games going on between Spanish and Italian teams in virus hotbeds. And then surprisingly, all of a sudden, everyone's getting sick in both of those cities. So personally, from my perspective, what we have learned over these last year, back to the old FDR line, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. I think that there's fear and panic right now. People aren't exactly sure. You look at one thing and it's saying wear a mask. The other one says a mask is bad. You talk about social distancing. No, you got to get outside. But from their perspective, governments and all of these sports leagues, et cetera, they're responsible for more than just themselves. And who knows, even from a player's perspective, someone might have their grandparents that they're watching out for because of what's going on in the economy. Someone might have a neighbor that they help treat, or their wife does, et cetera. So it kind of has little feelers going out throughout the community and throughout the region. And what we've seen from an MLS and NWSL perspective, where they tried to go into a bubble, maybe is a bit of a hybrid, because all of these other countries and leagues you're talking about, Raheel, are relatively small. You don't have 4,000-mile treks between teams in airplanes. It might be a bus ride or a train ride or a 40-minute plane ride, if that. So I think you can learn from what they've done to try and isolate. They've estimated, I think, 300 to 500 people, even in a closed-door match, needed to run this from a television, radio and broadcasting perspective, as well as just run the facilities. So you're not going to get down to just 22 guys on a field. But what I think they have learned is you have to take it seriously, have to go through all of the protocols. Better safe than sorry from their perspective. Now, like I said, from David, Raheel, me, we can decide what we want to do. We can lock ourselves up in the basement, or we can go out and grab a suntan in the park and just hope that they don't throw us into the clink. So, but that's a personal decision. these leagues have so much more responsibility right now. And I think that the fact that they're not the first up, the fact that all of these foreign leagues have done it, and now even in the United States, the soccer leagues have done it, they can learn, they have learned, and now they're going to put it into practice. But between you and me, guys, I can hardly wait till the day that we can finally put this thing behind us and have these parks filled with fans again like they want to be.
That was a great Phil Schoen. Phil, we appreciate your time, man. I've wanted to talk to you for quite a while. Love your work, and I love you're a great ambassador for the sport that we all love here. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. And David Raheel, anytime. And you know what? Next time I pop out to visit the family in Fort Worth, maybe we can take a little left-hand turn.
You got that, my friend. And I'm going to be in Miami soon, so we will all connect. And that does it for our show, Heezy. So appreciate everybody watching, listening, and we will talk to you guys next time, probably on Sunday. But you know how these video podcasts work, just whenever they happen.